The Cleveland Browns versus the Tennessee Titans, a battle, Brad, of 8-3 teams. And these are two of my favorite teams, and I know, like, Browns fans. First of all, when people watch these segments and we pick against the spread, you got to understand, like, first of all, I really honestly don't root for a team anymore. People ask me, like, who do I root for? I don't root for a team. Sometimes I'll root against players. Like, I tend to root against Cam Newton because he bugs me, right? So I root against players, but ultimately it doesn't matter. What ultimately matters to me is getting the pick right so that I can make as much money as I can watching these games as possible. That's who I root for. I root for my wallet. So the Cleveland Browns, I loved them coming. I hated them last year, and so did you, Brad, because of all the hype. And having grown up a Washington fan, I know about Dan Snyder and the offseason and the big splashes and the hype that it brings. I mean, that was the easiest. The implosion of Freddie Kitchens and the hype team, that was the easiest thing to predict for the Cleveland Browns.
Sure.
But when they made the change to Stefanski at head coach, finally a commitment to the run. Finally, you see this team just give the ball to Nick Chubb, who I think is, and I've in the last 2 weeks I'm saying, I'm not dancing around it anymore. He is the best running back in the league, bar none.
Well, all right. Well, bar none, I don't know, because they're facing a guy this week that may compete for that, right?
Derrick Henry, yeah, you got to say, and Tennessee Titans fans, you're right. They will bang the drum for that. Look, I love Derrick Henry, and I'll say this to Derrick Henry. What bugged me about Derrick Henry, and it wasn't about Derrick Henry, it was the old, was it Munchak? Whoever the previous head coaches were, they would take him off the field and put Deion Lewis in the field, and they would never throw him the ball. And I'm like, Derrick Henry can catch everybody. Come on now.
Sure. I want to talk about Cleveland just for a little bit, okay? Because I think that I was against them, but maybe not them as a whole, maybe Baker Mayfield. But I will say this, man. Their 3 losses, okay? They're 8-3, right? Mm-hmm. Their 3 losses have been to the Ravens, right?
Steelers.
The Steelers and the Raiders. And the Raiders. Okay?
And the Raiders, and they were playing essentially in a hurricane without wind. It was like 50-mile-an-hour wind.
Exactly. And I think that is pretty damn impressive, man. And they've beaten teams like the Colts.
The Colts is a big win.
That's a big win. Their victories aren't super impressive, but this is the NFL, and I don't think that matters, right? And so what if you beat the Bengals twice, man? These are division games, and it's an NFL team. So I gotta give kudos to them.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually talking to my other podcast, the fantasy football portion of kind of what we do here, the Fantasy Football Almanac Show. And I was talking with David, and David said basically the opposite of what you said. Is like Cleveland, I'm selling on them, and down on Baker Mayfield, and look at who they've lost. When they've lost, they've gotten the doors blown off of them. When they played the really good teams, they've lost, which, by the way, I throw the Colts into a really good team. So I think that's a really quality win.
Me too.
And, Cleveland, what they do offensively, it's stuff, and it's probably more age-oriented, because you and me gravitate towards teams like the Raiders and like the Tennessee Titans, by the way, that commit to the run. If you commit to the run, and like – everybody will say, they'll pull out the stats and they'll say, these little bubble screens, they're an extension of the run game. The extension of the run game does not exist. That is a myth. There's a difference, as you and I know, that when you run and you have your 300-pound offensive lineman lean on your defensive line for 4 quarters.
Yes, right.
You might not
get a whole different deal.
Yeah, you might not get crazy yardage in the first and second quarter. When the third and fourth quarter comes around and that defensive line rotation is gassed and their legs are gone and they can't do anything, then you gash these teams. So
that's the true power of the run game. Mm-hmm. That's the true beauty of it. It doesn't always have to be ripping off 12 yards a chunk, right?
Yeah.
But sticking to it and constantly leaning on the defense so that in the middle of the third quarter they start to bail out. And then you have control over them. And that is a truly effective run game.
And then what happens, as we saw, as we've seen the Titans do, and over and over again, which is why, by the way, Titans fans, I loved the Titans last year. And now people are starting to wake up, although at 8-3, people still probably don't give them the respect, as an elite team.
That is true. And you know why I think that is because and maybe this is just an old narrative, but Tannehill is not seen as somebody who's special. Yeah. And maybe that's because we're remembering his early days and first impressions tend to stick. right? But I don't know the numbers. But I'm assuming that if we looked at Tannehill's QBR and his production in the past, 20 games?
Right.
I bet they're right up there with some of the best in the league. I'm just assuming. I cannot say that for a fact.
And again, I don't have it off the top of my head, but the thing when the Titans before, because I think they had like a 1 or 2 game losing streak. So before
they went about 1-3 or something like that in a 4-game stretch. They kind of lost their way for a sec, 2-2 maybe. Yeah, they fell off, but now they've won. They've won 4 straight, I think.
Bottom line is, teams will go through that. I mean, the Seahawks lost 2 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. Like, the good teams lose games. This is the NFL.
Lost 3 or 4 the Seahawks. Yes, right.
Yeah,
right.
so stuff happens. You go through bad quarters of the season and all that stuff. But Tennessee and Tannehill specifically. Tannehill, he had that Miami Dolphins stink. Like, a lot of people hate the Dolphins. And by the way, the Dolphins are pretty good this year. You need to take them seriously because their defense is freaking legit. And their offense, even with Tua or Fitzpatrick in there, is good enough with that defense to win games and be a contestant. Like, they're probably, I think, based on their schedule, they have a really good shot at being in the playoffs. They really do. Now, the Titans, I thought they were going to lose to the Colts. I mean, full disclosure, I picked the Colts. I think you did as well last week, Brad. And the Tennessee Titans went and ran through the Colts, which is hard to do. And by the way, the Cleveland Browns did the same thing, a few weeks ago. But Tannehill is good enough to carve you up. Is he a guy that, okay, like we saw, Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, he get 200 yards in the first quarter against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? He's probably not that guy. But as we talk about on the show, there's like 2 or 3 guys in the league that do that, and probably only 1 or 2 that consistently. Well, I guess you could this year you can throw in Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson. Right. Off the top of my head, that every single week they can put up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. It doesn't matter the matchup.
Yes,
right?
Tannehill
isn't that guy, but that's not to say he's not a really good quarterback. I have him as probably a top. We haven't done the quarterback game in a while. Maybe I'd put him in the top 10 in the league. And with this,
I think he's on that second level with a bunch of other guys.
Exactly.
Right?
And I have that second tier. Massive.
You can't say who's better there. That's difficult, but you can put him in that B+ class, which is good.
Yeah, it is good. I'll give you 2 names that throughout the last decade people have been throwing out there. Are they elite? Aren't they elite? Blah, blah, blah. I'll give you 2 names, Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan.
Yeah, right.
I think I prefer Ryan Tannehill because of his mobility. And look what he's done when he's had good coaching and Arthur Smith, a good play caller, a good run game. The dude is like, when he gets in the red zone, they score touchdowns.
Yeah, they do.
In goal line situations.
For sure. And they lost to the Steelers. Okay. Now, they did have a bad loss because they lost to the Bengals.
So and they outplayed the Steelers significantly in the second half, by the way. Yes, but they lost.
Right. So perception is that they kind of laid an egg. Look, man, everybody lays an egg. Look at the Raiders this past weekend. It's just one of the
egg of all eggs.
The egg.
It was a pterodactyl egg.
It was
awful, man.
It was a pterodactyl egg. However, as a Green Bay fan, in the past 2 seasons, I have seen them win 80% of their games, but the losses are an egg lay.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I don't exactly know what that means, but I can say this: every now and then, you just lay an egg. Mm-hmm. You come out and you get punched in the mouth, then you have 2 turnovers out of nowhere, and then there you go.
Then you're reeling.
Right?
Yep.
And then you're reeling, and everything you had planned for, you can't do anymore, and you're screwed. So I guess the point is, the Titans had a bad loss to the Bengals, and everybody has a bad loss.
Yeah.
And that's just how it goes.
And that was a trap game. I think I picked the Bengals to cover that game and Titans to win a close one. It was like right sandwiched in between big games. That's just always kind of a problem. And the Titans defense hadn't been playing well. They did, I think, put up their best game of the season against the Colts last week, though, because I really like the way the Colts have been playing football lately. And the Tennessee Titans, to me, that was their most impressive win of the season. The Bills game, I know it was a nice win, but I still think that Colts victory and what they did to the Colts last week was most. And that's what you want to do, man. You want to be peaking the last quarter and into the playoffs. It doesn't matter. And the Cleveland Browns, by the way, both of these teams are 8-3. And when I say these teams, have they peaked, have they not? And I say the Tennessee Titans haven't peaked. A lot of fans, when they watch this stuff, and again, I'm looking at this from a betting point of view. It's just I'm not super happy and thrilled with this X, Y, or Z. I think the inclination for people watching this is to, defend your team and all that stuff. To me, I think it's a good thing. Like I've banged on. We have last week. We said that the Chiefs. We picked the Bucs to cover. We were right on that, by the way.
Yeah.
And we said even the Bucs might even upset. If it weren't for that first quarter, the Bucs completely dominated the game in quarters 2 through 4. It's just that they got dominated, massively dominated, massively dominated. But I've come out and I've said, and you have too, is that the Chiefs look like they're kind of like sleepwalking and just like.
I know. I'm going to correct you for a second there. I don't think that the Bucs massively dominated the rest of the game. I actually didn't see it that way.
Okay.
I think they played better than they did in the first quarter, but Jesus, I mean, that was bound to happen. Let's face it.
Yeah, they were. Right? Yeah, they were like what the way the Raiders played the entire game is how the Bucs played in the first quarter.
Exactly. They could gain 2 yards and it would have been a better production.
Yeah, it was bad.
I want to say this about the Bucs, if you don't mind me transitioning to them. All right. The way their offense looks these days, it reminds me of the 18 Packers with McCarthy. And it looks like there's zero ingenuity. It looks like a lot of their production is dependent on their offensive players winning their matchups and getting open. And I think that's an old school, archaic way to play.
Yeah.
Because the McVays and the Shanahans, and now we could even say the LaFleurs of the league are scheming people open.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And if you cannot do that, you're going to look stale.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the Bucs offense looks like it has no vision, and right,
they're almost. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like they're an older. When I say old school, I mean for us that's like a '90s offense. It looks like a '90s offense that's like, put your quarterback back there for 10 seconds and let him throw, although Brady gets rid of the ball quickly, so I'm not banging on them. But it looks like they want everything to run off a play action, but their run game, even though Ronald Jones statistically is nice for fantasy football players, it's like it's not strong enough to really pull the safeties up and get stuff over the top.
For sure. And I don't know if they're depending on Gronk to win his matchup, or because they have studs on the receiving core, man. Yeah. They got Gronkowski and Antonio Brown, obviously, and Mike Evans, and I think they're even their
Godwin,
guy. Godwin. And but I'm putting this one on Arians, and right. Well, can I say this? Is there anybody worse on the microphone than Bruce Arians? Jesus, that
Adam Gase. I'll give you Adam Gase is worse.
All right. But second place goes to Bruce Arians. The guy is like a human wood chipper that can't, he's like so coarse and crass and always manages to say like an offensive thing about his team.
Yeah. I don't like coach that criticizes it. I don't like we banged on Lamar Jackson a couple weeks ago about like coming out and saying the coaching isn't good enough in the press. I keep all the criticism in the locker room. I don't like when coaches come out and bang on players either. It goes both ways. Shut up, keep it indoors.
Yes. The only thing anybody should say is, I should be better, it's on me. Bang!
Yeah, and you hear like the notorious Brady and Belichick thing, and Belichick would eviscerate Brady behind closed doors. What does he say in the press conferences? Coaching needs to be better. Players need. He always says every phase needs to get better. Aaron's just like, we got people open. I don't know what he's doing. He's not missing him in practice.
Man?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. And maybe it's some type of psychological motivational tool.
I don't think he's that deep. I'm not saying he's stupid. I don't think that's it. I think he's just he's just. But I'll call it like I see it.
Like, dude, come on, man.
Back to
I don't like that either.
Back to Tennessee and Cleveland. Let me just say this about talking about like offenses. I think Stefanski and Arthur Smith are two of the best play callers in the game, and I love that Stefanski got a job. I think that the biggest travesty in the offseason last season, and maybe part of it was because of the Tennessee Titans run. They got to the AFC Championship game. Arthur Smith should have gotten more looks as an NFL head coach. I'll be shocked if he doesn't get a job. But the one good thing, I guess, if you're a Titans fan, you really want to keep this coaching staff intact, and you do, by the way, is that, one, I think Tennessee is kind of built for the playoffs. Two, I think they're peaking, so they might make a little bit of a deeper run. And three, everybody's talking about Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City. And I'll be honest with you guys, like, look, Matt Nagy, he doesn't impress me, a guy from the Andy Reid tree. Peterson, I know he got the Super Bowl, doesn't impress me in Philadelphia. What's going on there? Bieniemy, I know he's going to get a look at a head coach. I think Arthur Smith would be my number one candidate this year. And Stefanski, what he's doing, let me switch it over to Cleveland because we've been talking a lot of Titans. Cleveland, my big question for Cleveland is, let me say the Raider game. I did a reaction video to that, and I said, look, the reason the Raiders won is because they gave Josh Jacobs like 30 carries in that game. And you look at the stat line and you see, game situation and all that. I don't care. Just run the ball like 30 times. And I can't remember if Chubb was even back for that. I tend to think he wasn't. Just run the ball 30 times.
Well, that's been their formula, right? I mean, Baker hasn't thrown more than 20 passes in a little bit, right? I mean,
probably not.
It's around there.
Yeah, and I like Baker a little bit more than you do, but that's not to say I think I wouldn't even put him in the top 2 tiers. And I have a large second tier of quarterbacks.
Sure.
And, this offense, what's interesting to me is that they're essentially like a run the ball and 2 quarterback offense, or 2 tight end, I should say, offense. And they remind me of the Philadelphia Eagles team last year that made the run because all of the wide receivers were hurt. This year, I think, Jarvis Landry's nice and everything, but he's not winning you games. To me, what Cleveland wanted to do is pretty obvious, is run the ball, give the running backs 30 touches at least between the 2 of them, and on those double move play action passes, Odell Beckham feast on those one-on-one matchups when he gets them. And that was working. And hell, it's still working even without Odell Beckham.
Sure.
But losing Odell Beckham to me is one of the most underrated storylines in the league. And Cleveland keeps winning, so it's not a big deal. But in the playoffs, they're going to need him. And I will say...
Okay, let me say this. Did Odell Beckham ever really make that team better?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
Did you ever?
Not last year with Kitchens. I throw that out the window. I'm talking about the first part of this year when he was active.
Okay, but I watched DK Metcalf last night, right? And I watched Tyreek Hill, and I watched Devontae Adams, and you see these guys that just consistently have these 2 touchdowns for 130 yards. Did Odell Beckham have anything like that ever with Cleveland?
He did. I feel like he had a 3 touchdown game against Dallas this year. And let me say this,
he threw one that day, didn't he? Didn't he?
Maybe he had a run
against Dallas.
Well, he had a huge game, I know, because I had him in my fantasy lineup.
But the fact that we're both admitting right now and searching for any type of performance like that, where we could easily look to Devontae and Metcalf and those other guys.
Let me say this. I mean, we know by nature of my setup at home, I watch a lot of games live. Just a lot, because I have multiple games going. It's like the TV wall, right? I've said this early in the season before he got hurt, and we haven't really said it before. There were multiple times this season, multiple games, where I've seen Odell Beckham on a double move, wide open, certain touchdown, and missed by Baker Mayfield for one reason or another.
Sure, but I guess the bigger point is that it never really worked. It was never really that.
But I wouldn't put that on Beckham's shoulders.
Okay,
personally.
Maybe not, right? So
I think Beckham was doing what we saw him do his rookie or his second year in New York before stuff kind of went south. I just don't think they were hitting them, and I would put that responsibility on Baker personally.
Okay, and that's fine, and I agree with you mostly. I do, but the point still remains: was Cleveland any better with Odell Beckham? And I would argue that they weren't, because it never really worked, no matter whose fault it was.
I think that's
so while you say the Odell Beckham injury is the most underrated story, I have to disagree, because I think they're the same team, and I don't think they're any better or worse with or without him.
Okay,
oddly enough,
I'll give you that, but what I will say is that the ceiling lowers without Beckham on the field. That's my feeling with him.
But how can you say that? Because we've never seen them really be this accelerated high production offense with him. I've never seen it, and trust me, I pay attention to them because I want them to fail. I've never seen it.
I want Cleveland to succeed.
I don't want them to fail. I don't like when Baker starts sniffing himself and he's not really doing anything. That bothers me.
Like a young Sean Ryan walking around powerlifting and so fast.
Powerlifting and fast. Yeah. That's the only part that bothers me.
Yeah. I don't mind. You're a quarterback. I don't mind the bravado, and he has a reason as a chip on the shoulder. I don't bang him too much, but you and I agree. Cleveland fans like him a lot more than we do. But that's the case with everything, man. I criticize Chicago Bears. I criticize David Montgomery, and you wouldn't believe the comments I get. And Todd Gurley with the Falcons specifically, the comments I get. And the rudeness and the profane comments I get when I'm just like, he's like a 3.2 yard per carry running back. What do you like about him? You can replace him with an undrafted free agent like James Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars, that undrafted rookie. He's like the dirtiest running back in the league right now that nobody knows about, outside of fantasy football players, I guess. You can replace him. Just replace him. He sucks.
And they attack you.
And they attack me because they love their team. And that's that's part of it.
I want to give Baker a little bit of love here, though. I want to give Baker a little bit of love here. The man can act.
I love his commercials.
Dude,
and that's why I'm rooting for Baker, man. I love his commercials.
I know. The latest one where he's deep frying the turkey with him.
I haven't seen that.
I saw it last night, and I'm like, these two people can act really well. It's quite amazing.
I love the book club one when they kicked the person who didn't show up out of the book club. He's like,
they're good. They're smart. They're funny, and he nails it.
I love when he crushed the beer at that Indians game too. You remember that? You know, he shotgunned that thing. I like Baker, man. I think he's great for the city. I root for him because I like some of that stuff. I really do.
Maybe I'm coming around now.
But
the commercials are softening.
The commercials by themselves are enough to root for Baker Mayfield if you don't want him because they're so good. Because once Peyton Manning retired and you got rid of some of the goofiness, now we get like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and the discount double check and the state. Those are the worst commercials. Like, let's get somebody with some personality. At least Baker has some personality, man. Everybody else sucks.
Those State Farm commercials
bad.
made me want to vomit.
They
all over myself. I can't take them.
The best discount double check commercial was BJ Raji doing the dance.
Yeah. This Jake from State Farm, why did they give him like this tight red muscle shirt?
You know what it was? Yeah, I tell you what it was. Is those guys, those commercials that get these nationally syndicated commercials, they get loaded. Like they're millionaires when they get those things. Yeah. And I think he got one, and like he just had money, so he didn't have to work anymore, and he just went to the gym, and he just got like all like jacked up. He's just like, come on, man.
It's so ridiculous,
come on, man.
Dude. And nobody can act.
Nobody can act except for Baker Mayfield.
Except for Baker Mayfield.
I love the man, that book club commercial for me, and I like when when he was trying to cover the seats when the storm was coming. He's telling the groundskeeper to cover the seats. Come on, we can work two people. We can do it twice as fast. Love it.
It's good.
Let's get to the game. So look, like both of these teams are going to try to establish the run. To me, I think the difference is, I liked what I saw from the Tennessee Titans defense. I will say this, Cleveland Browns defense is season long. They've been underrated too because of all the talk about offense. Baker Mayfield gets a lot of attention, the run game, all that stuff. The defense for Cleveland has been very good this year. The Tennessee Titans defense played better against the Colts. I don't know if that was like a mirage or if it's the start of them playing better. I think that, to me, Ryan Tannehill and the way he runs the offense, I think he's more likely to be able to bring a team back from behind, like we saw in the second half of the Steelers game. Didn't end up happening, but they closed the gap. They had the ball at the end of the game there. I think the Tennessee Titans are slightly better, but here's the line. Bovada has Cleveland +4 at Tennessee. Who would you have?
I actually, even though I like what Cleveland's doing, I like Tennessee more, and I think that I think they cover. And I think Cleveland falls short for sure. They don't make it happen.
I like Cleveland. I will say this: I would like to see Nick Chubb always get 20 carries and at least 5 receptions a game. And he had a great game last week. It was 22 totals. I think it was 19 carries and 3 receptions. Not enough. Give him more touches. And Kareem Hunt, give it. I'm serious. This team, and they're a good team, man. And any team that can run and play defense like Cleveland, they're going to be a team that's hard to beat in the postseason. And I really love the coaching staff, but I just think Tennessee's just a little bit better. And because of that, Tennessee at home, I believe that Tennessee will cover this spread. I think Cleveland is absolutely a playoff team. They're 8-3. They have 2 games against the Giants and the Jets that should be gimme games. I like the Giants defense, but they should run through the Giants no problem. The Jets is a gimme as long as they don't overlook them. Cleveland should be a lock to make the playoffs, even with this loss. Tennessee, with this win, if in theory would go to 9-3, they'd be a lock too. These two teams could give us a playoff matchup again in the wild card. 7 playoff teams this year in the conference, per conference. I'm going to take Tennessee to cover. I like both of these teams quite a bit. I will have this probably on my primary TV, but definitely one of them this week because I think it's just going to be an old school game. I'm going to love it. I like both of these teams, fans. Don't bang me just because I picked against the Browns. The next game we're going to feature here